start filleting the giant fish that used to be caught in the early 70s, like 60-pound codfish sometimes. They were huge. So I would watch that, and I just, that was my biggest aspiration. Someday I'm going to be a filleter. And when I turned 13, I got my fillet knife. I went down, followed the other kids down, and I learned how to fillet fish really well. And I did a little something extra, which was take the skin off the back side of the fillets. And that made my fillets very coveted because they looked just like you bought them in Hannaford by the time I was done. And those were some really interesting early lessons for me. You know, I learned about how to work really hard. I learned what it's like to have an aspiration and to see where, you know, where I wanted to get to. Kept my eyes on the prize. I learned about getting paid and saving a little bit and spending a little bit. And I think that looking back on it, I was very fortunate. And I know how rare it is for other students or for young kids to have an experience like that. And I know that what you do and what you offer in terms of helping them to organize their lives and to set some goals and to plan toward achieving those goals and to learn how to manage their finances and their other resources are some of the most critical skills that they're going to learn in all of school. Another thing that you're doing when you're teaching them how to manage their finances, how to manage planning of their lives outside of high school, you're helping critical brain development in a way that is possibly the most valuable thing of all, which I've studied. Resilience. It's a phenomenon that kind of almost feels magical. It's like the holy grail of life, because we all know that we're going to face hard times. Look at us right now. And everyone is going to be facing the worst day they had ever expected. Every one of us, we have this in common. It's part of being human. And we all know that some students or some kids and some adults, when they are faced with that hardest of times, they fall down and they don't get back up. And then there are those who rise back up no matter how many blows they're absorbing in life. And that strange phenomenon of resilience that you can't really trace very easily to inputs or other things has been determined to be connected with something that you give your kids, and it's called internal locus of control. That is the critical understanding of your own behaviors, words, actions, and the impact of those on the reality that you're living in. Now, for little kids who are growing up in disadvantaged households, that has nothing to do with their, you know, they haven't created their realities. But over time, as kids get older and are starting to be more independent, and as they take on the tasks of self-care and planning for life after high school, these are the times when your programs come in and provide them with the greatest of all gifts. You take what is currently a kaleidoscopic perspective. They have, you know, things swirling around and happening without a lot of cause and effect in their lives. And when you are teaching them about planning, about setting goals, about managing their finances and resources, you're giving them control that they can then exercise and transfer across a lot of other areas in their lives. And it's during those critical adolescent brain development times when those synaptic connections either get formed or they get pruned away. And so you're coming in at the perfect time to be supporting kids in developing critical neural networks that will create in them that sense, the cause and effect, that they actually do have a role, they have power, they have personal choice in a lot of the things that they do as they get older. You'll see, if you watch like adults that you know, who externalize all the time. Certainly externalizing is it's a coping skill of a lot of teenagers. You'll say, hey, you know what, why are you in the principal's office? And they'll say somebody else was running their mouth. They don't ever say, well, I, you know, did this or I did that. And that's because their locus of control is so external to them. And when they start to own, well, actually, let me just give you the sad counterpart. Easy to see somebody externalizing the blame for when things go wrong, but the insidious counterpart to that is they also externalize the blame when things go well. So many of you who are working with more at-risk kids, you know the experience where your program has made them successful. They have blossomed, and somebody says to them, why are you doing so well in that class? And their answer crushes your spirit because they say, it was easy, or, I didn't have to try very hard, or, it's like they'll externalize even their successes. That crushes resilience. That is definitely the phenomenon that is known to create in a person the tendency to lie down and not get back up when things get really hard. And so above all of the tangible, pragmatic, and other gifts that you're providing to your students and to our society, and to Maine, the state of Maine, who is going to need these kids to have these skills that you're providing, on top of all of that, you're wiring their brains for surviving and for thriving in any circumstance. So I don't know if you think about that very often, but I certainly do. I was an alternative educator. I did a lot of life skills education for kids, and I really have researched it, and you're doing remarkable work. I guess I would like to say in closing from my remarks, and then open it right up for all your questions. I'm sure there are going to be many COVID related and et cetera, but I just want to say, first of all, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Your work is greatly appreciated. Congratulations, especially to the Financial Educators of the Year, Raylene Allen from Madison High School, and Samantha Drost of Central Aroostook High School. Congratulations for your amazing achievements and the gifts you've given to your students over the years. And thanks for including me in your wonderful event today. I'll take whatever questions you have.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And what a great story. It leads very well into the first questions that we have. And I think you touched on them a bit, because those early work experience, opportunities for kids are, I think, significant in terms of money management. But I wonder if perhaps related to that first job or later on, if you could maybe talk about what life experience lesson or a mentor who helped instill your personal finance habits or good personal finance habits. I'm sure those early jobs and all of that work and seeing your family working so hard was a huge part of that. But was there a specific mentor that you want to talk about related to personal finance skills?
Well, so back in the day, they didn't have, this wasn't a course that could happen in high school. So really, I would have to say that I was fortunate enough to have possibly the hardest working parents on the planet. We, as a family, we worked 7 days a week, extraordinary hours, school vacations, summer times. And so I think I learned a lot about money management. I mean, I learned in that working in their business, I learned about, I created receipts as a little child. I can't even imagine this day and age, like, little kids writing out receipts for party of 10 people paying $50 a piece kind of a thing. And it was all by hand, of course. I learned how to run one of those things that would go over the credit card
machine
pretty early. Yeah. Didn't know what those meant for a long time. But then I would say, you know what? It was my grandmother. My parents taught me the hard work and just going all in and doing everything as well as you possibly could, no matter what the job. If you were a wormer, you were going to be the best wormer. And if you were a filleter, you would be the one that took the skin off the back of the fillets. And I have a technique. If anybody is trying to get the skin off their fish, you can just hit me up, and I've got a skill that I can share. That's what I think we don't have, at least in my life, I've taken mentorships and guidance from various places. My parents, it was about the hard work and to try as hard as you could and to be bold about it and to be kind to everybody. My grandmother, on my mom's side, I would visit her after high school. She was in an apartment right near Thornton Academy's campus, and I would come over after, and we would sit around and talk about all kinds of things. And she guided my aspirations, helped me to think about how am I going to plan for this, and then before that, how am I going to plan for that? The backward planning strategies that we now talk about kind of openly, that wasn't a concept. It certainly wasn't something that happened in school. And she taught me about banking. She taught me about investing. I would sit with her while she would do her bills. She kept everything handwritten in a little notebook. So So I'm very fortunate to have had this level of family support, multi-generational family support. A grandmother who, by the way, was born at the turn of the century, who lived through World War I, who lived through World War II, the Great Depression, the whole, mixing orange tablets in with lard to make butter kind of stuff. I mean, these are people who have had to be very careful, and it feels like we're approaching a time, one of those, once in a generation situations. I think as a society, as a global society, we're going to be stepping into that sort of thing. And so your students will be the ones who'll be teaching their kids and their grandchildren what are the resourceful lessons that one learns from times of extreme hardship. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Those are such great stories. The follow-up question to that, what do you wish you would have been taught about personal finance that you more so as an adult or in your current position now? What do you wish you had learned earlier on?
Well, I think I wish I had learned earlier on, but most of it. I would not hold myself up as the pillar of financial literacy. I just was a little awkward. So I think I'm still learning today. I'm learning a lot from my husband, and I'm learning by, I guess, what do I wish I learned earlier? Certainly, I could have done a lot more saving, could have done some investing perhaps. Those would be really helpful skills for me. I was able to early on learn, the math of finance, percentages and rates and all of those things based on other work I did later in my later teenage years and on forward. But yeah, I think just the management, and I also think it would have been nice to have been taught to make a life plan. I didn't have a plan. I bobbed like a cork on the tide and, just kind of came across opportunities, and I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of extremely difficult challenges in my life, but I've also had a lot of just incredible opportunities. And I guess had I been a little more organized around that, had I been able to set measurable goals and check in with myself on how I'm doing toward those goals and pull myself back on track, I think I would have been better off all along.
That's great. Thank you. Some other questions that have come through leading up to this. So you knew we would get to COVID and distance learning. It was inevitable. Folks, just to remind folks who are on the Zoom webinar right now to submit any questions that you have via the Q&A. So if you've got questions for the commissioner, please put those forward now. We do have a few other questions that we received, but certainly if you have things that you'd like to ask, just share those in the Q&A. So what we would love to hear about during this distance learning experiment, what do you feel are some of the unanticipated challenges or successes that you've discovered that perhaps you didn't anticipate in the beginning?
Right. Let me first apologize if you hear a dog barking in the background. That would be my microphone. We are providing emergency care for a grand dog just for a week or so, and he's super excited. Okay, so the unexpected challenges, I guess we'll start there, and then the unexpected successes. The unexpected challenges start right off the bat in the most raw and obvious form. We all have, every school district and every building has an emergency management plan. I've been part of, in several different districts I've worked in over the years, I've been part of developing and honing and reviewing these plans. All of the plans have a section around pandemic planning, and all of those pandemic planning sections that I've ever seen cover maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks off of our regular routines. And I don't think in the history of American education, there has been a disruption as complete and as long lasting and pervasive as what we're experiencing across the nation right now. I don't know there's been a time that American public education has been fully remote, ever. And so that is unexpected challenge. That presents unbelievable challenge. An expected challenge that has blossomed from a concerning, very concerning inequity to a full-blown humanitarian crisis, in my opinion, is our lack of connectivity across the state of Maine. I think our lack of broadband, fast, high-speed, internet service for families, for educators, for students who live in these geographical regions where it's very difficult to get that in place. And also those kids who live in families that are within a service area, but they don't have the wherewithal to pay for the service. I feel like at this point, broadband, high-speed internet access of any type, including cellular Wi-Fi, which is what we're now scrambling to provide, I think it should be like a public utility, frankly. I think at this day and age, it should be a human right, because the abrupt tearing away, especially for littler kids, well, actually with any age, you all know your teachers, think of your kids, think of how they looked to you day in and day out to be that dependable person who cares about them, has interest in their lives. I mean, there's been just a ripping apart of relationships, of that other community that was like a family, that is a classroom, has been just taken from people. And are incredibly resourceful, adaptable, and ingenious educators across the state have been nimble, creative, and just actually inspirational in every way in reaching out to kids. Problem is, not all of them can reach all of the kids. And so that has been our biggest challenge. In meeting, I used to meet once a month with a group of stakeholders, educational group and association leaders once a month. We're now meeting 3 times a week, and we're reaching out to the field for their perspectives on all of this. And we've discovered that the lack of connectivity is the most profound and jarring impact right now of the COVID crisis on our education system as a whole. And we're trying very hard to address that. The unexpected successes are, well, I'm married, for example, to a 30-year veteran educator who had not ever taught remotely. He's a science and math teacher in Westbrook at the middle school. And he has just embraced a Google Classroom, and he's up like at 4 every morning setting up lessons. He has office hours face-to-face with groups of kids and their families. And he's not the only, he's just a great example I get to see up close and personal all the time. At A, how hard he's working, B, how successful, remarkably successful much of it has been. And there's an interesting phenomenon where kids who've been more quiet and more withdrawn, in some cases we're hearing reports that they are more engaged in this virtual setting. So there will be gifts. And I guess this harkens back to resilience and how critical it is. Every crisis provides us with countless opportunities, but usually we're so overwhelmed and distraught because of the crisis that we don't see them. And we've been working hard at the DOE to keep our eyes open for those types of opportunities. Look for the, sifting through the rubble for the gems. And it's clear to me that Maine's educators are among the most resilient and resourceful and adaptable people ever. And I'm just completely in awe.
Same here. Absolutely. That's great. This is sort of a follow-up question. Schools obviously had a very, very limited amount of time to make this transition. It was so unexpected for all of us. And there have been great examples where it's gone really well, and other examples where there have just been some really major challenges, and you've spoken to those already. As we come out of this crisis, hopefully as we start up next academic year, what lasting benefits do you think might stick? What things that, we've gone through this experience, and you've spoken to the critical need for internet and broadband access for all. So I think that hopefully that's a movement and something that we get closer to in the state. But what things do you think might stay in place as a result of this?
Well, there are a number of lessons that we're learning and opportunities that we're maximizing. So certainly we're going to have to, whether we want to or not, we're going to have to live with some version of remote learning for a considerable period of time. The scenario whereby we all come back in the fall and everyone is in bricks and mortar situations full time as usual, as though nothing had happened, is a very slim on the horizon hope. But I feel we're going to have more of a blended model going forward. What's good about that is it does provide flexibility. It will continue to cause us to learn and to grow and to challenge us in ways that I think anyone in education ought to be challenged, you know, to continue to learn and to grow and to adapt. There are some great things we had a terrible accountability assessment system before, and nobody liked it. Nobody could use the data from our assessment system, and it was mostly used to shame and sort school districts. And I think we now have the opportunity, because that's blown up. Now that it's gone away, we have the opportunity to rebuild it. So I think some of the cool things are the level of collaboration that we can have, the unexpected engagement that our DOE team, like Joe and all of them, have recognized that they're having more personal, more intimate, more constant, and meaningful engagement with the field than they've even ever had before, because people don't have to drive all this way and get a sub, and you know, like suddenly poof, we're all together here in this room. And that's been, I think, a gift from all of this. I think that our method of providing professional development in a geographically diverse state like Maine, where people up in the Crown of Maine are often left out or have to travel great distances to access the same types of opportunities as their colleagues in the other parts of the state, and also Washington County, the remote areas, all of them. Now you can do this, and you can have everybody in the state right here, and with equitable opportunity to participate. Not like I want to replace all in-person stuff with this, but this certainly does bode well for you know, future engagement with all the practitioners and sharing of ideas. I think education is very isolating, and once you close your classroom door, it's often like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody knows what's going on in here. I mean, that's a real thing, is that there's a sense of teachers can actually start feeling nervous that they're, you know, not doing enough or not enough in some way. And I think having this kind of an open window to be able to connect with one another will help people to know that, no, you're right on track, A, and B, what a cool idea, and I'll take that idea from you, and here's one that I have. And I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity for collegial sharing as a result. And I think we are going to, we're going to be applying for a large grant as a state, and it's part of the CARES Act bundle, but it's a competitive grant for the innovative redesign of education systems. And so we are going to write that grant and see what we can do in terms of piloting some very exciting new ways of doing things.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you. So we have some questions that have come through live. Our personal finance and education economics community, we have 85 or so attendees, 88, I think. And I would be shocked if this question didn't come through. So it came through several times, and probably will come as no shock to you. Questions about requirements, you know, requiring personal finance and economics as a mandate, if you will. And of course, Maine is a local control state, you know, requiring broad course requirements, mandates across the state has its own set of challenges. But I think, as I look at the questions and distill them, I wonder if perhaps you could share your thoughts on high schools who are increasingly requiring personal finance and economics as a course within their own districts as part of their own planning and coursework. I wonder if perhaps comment on, you know, as we move into this economic time and the challenges that families are facing, critical need for this content, and what your feelings are about are on their own going to be mandating and requiring finance and econ of their students.
Right. So I have a complicated answer to this, and I think I look at it as a good answer. I hope you will agree. I think we are looking at where we've hit a time in our public education system where we have to look at things very differently. I think for having us go back to exactly how we've done it before, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible. And I'm not talking financially or economically, although that's its own bundle of concerns, but also because people will be needing quick remediation on missed skills and concepts and content, and people will be needing possibly shorter time spans to learn just as much as ever. So for example, some of the guidance on returning to school in the fall from other countries that are starting to do that includes starting, like having kids come in waves, like students coming on Mondays and then another group on Tuesdays and another group on Wednesdays to avoid the crowding, like, you know, how are you gonna get the 6 feet of distancing, those kinds of concerns. So we have to be more efficient around how we do education, but it doesn't mean we get rid of any particular content areas. What I see happening is I think the siloing of content areas is a more recent phenomenon than we might think. Like way back in the day, you did your reading, your writing, and your arithmetic, right? You did those. But for a little while, in my early days as an educator, people were really into project-based learning, authentic applications, real-life, hands-on, multidisciplinary projects. And that was kind of exciting. And it was really wonderful to be in a life skills type environment where we were teaching our kids how to be a successful and effective human. We were able to bundle social studies, you know, with other humanities, with science, with, you know, the economy of the environment, the, you know, like all of these things that fit together. In recent years, when we were working very hard on siloing out content so we could be very specific about measuring skills in each standard for the proficiency-based diploma initiative that happened over the past, I don't know, 5 or 7 years, everyone had to silo it out. So there's economics, personal economics or personal finance, there's regular social studies, there's civics, there's, you know, algebra 1, and there's, you know, 20th century literature or something, you know, like everything was broken out into its most separate thing. Well, as we know, when our kids leave school, they're not going to walk down a hall and do math somewhere and then go into another room and do literacy stuff. And I think we need to be extremely creative. We need to include everything of what you're doing. It needs to be part of multidisciplinary educator teams. In my strong opinion, I'd love to see project-based integrated work rather than having to silo out personal finance here and poetry over here. I think we need to, I think we're on the verge of something more holistic and authentic for learning.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. In the interest of time, because I know you've got a hard stop, we do have more questions, but what I'd like to do is provide those to you directly. I can work with Joe to get these additional questions to you. Perhaps there's an opportunity in the future for us to do a more intimate Zoom meeting where we can kind of see each other and have a more informal conversation, because I think, you know, we've got a lot of interest and some great questions, and unfortunately running out of time here. As we close, I want to just share, I made them panelists so that we could allow Sammy and Raylene to be on screen. I'm so appreciative that you recognized them as the Maine Jumpstart Financial Educators of the Year. So Sammy is from Central Aroostook and Raylene is from Madison. So I wanted to give a moment for their faces to be shown and to congratulate them both and to warn them that there might be a delivery coming today while you're on your Zoom. So if you have dogs or pets that are going to bark or somebody that can go to the door, keep that in mind. So just, I'll give you the preview on that. But I just want to give them a chance to, you know, say hello and just let everybody see their faces, because they're amazing and are doing incredible work on behalf of their schools and their students and through Maine Jumpstart and our educator cohort. So just say hello, ladies.
Yay.
So much, Commissioner Makin. We're so appreciative for having you here today, and so appreciative of all of the great work and support that our educators have been receiving over the last several weeks. It's been great. I think it's wonderful that our first presenter is Joe Schmidt. So we'll be leaving you today and heading into that first session. But thank you so very much for being here.
Well, thank you all, and have a wonderful day of learning. And I'm certainly glad I don't have to follow Joe. I will sign out and just say I want to leave with a big thank you to every one of you, and congratulations to the Educators of the Year. Thank you for everything you do, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right. Sorry, ladies, I put you on the spot and made you show your video, whether you wanted to or not. All right, folks. So what I am going to do is go ahead and we're going to pull the agenda up and just do a quick refresher for those of you who've just joined. And I'm going to close your videos now, ladies. So I'm going to stop your video. Bye. We'll see you a little later today. They'll be back. For those of you who've just joined or joined at some point during the session, and I just want to pause.